Hello and welcome to part 3 of my series on the moon entitled Weird Facts About the Moon. Now I'm going to get into some interesting stuff today, but let's just have a quick recap on part 1 and part 2 of my series so far. If you're watching this video part 3 and you haven't watched part 1 and 2, I recommend that you do, because we're building a picture here, and the information is very mind-blowing for those of you who are unaware of this information. Many of you will be, because this isn't new. This has actually been around for a while, but to a lot of you it's going to be first-time information that you're hearing. So just to recap, in part 1 we talked about the fact that the moon is, first of all, too big, right? The moon shouldn't be as big as it is. Now I'm not going to go into why, because I explained it in part 1. You need to watch part 1. And then I go on to the fact that, okay, the moon is actually older than the Earth. So, you know, the mainstream theory that the moon came from the Earth doesn't stand up scientifically, because the moon is older than the Earth. In fact, it's like 1 billion years older than the Earth. There's rocks on the moon 1 billion years older than the oldest rocks on the Earth, and the dust in which the rocks sit are another 1 billion years older than the rocks. Okay, so it's strange. Okay, we also looked at the big whack theory, or the double big whack theory. Oh, hang on, no, sorry, my bad. That is about the Earth coming out of this. Oh goodness me. The moon coming out of the Earth, that is the big whack theory. Okay, so we've just talked about that. Another mainstream theory is that the moon just kind of drifted along and came within the Earth's gravitational field, and then it became our satellite. There's like, that doesn't stand up either, because the mathematical absurdities, and that's what I talked about in part 2, is the mathematical absurdities, which in my words, you know, because it does seem rather absurd mathematically, the amount of coincidences and synchronicities, the perfection, the harmony surrounding the Earth, Moon, Sun relationship. Okay, so that's a bit of a recap. There's more detail if you watch the videos, part 1 and part 2 that I did. So now we're going to talk about, in this video, evidence that the moon is hollow. Okay, there is evidence that the moon is hollow, which is strange. Okay, and of course it has to be strange, because my series is entitled Weird Facts Regarding the Moon. Okay, now later on, at the very end of my series, I'm actually going to draw my personal conclusions as to what all this information amounts to. However, in the meantime, I'll leave speculation out of it. Okay, we're just speaking about facts, and you can draw your own conclusions and speculate as you so desire. So, the hollow moon. Okay, now let me just add as well, and then I'm going to just dive straight into it. And I mentioned this in part 1 and part 2. I'm actually drawing my information from a book written by the controversial David Icke. Okay, nice guy though. Human Race Get Off Your Knees, The Lion Sleeps No More. Now, he actually was inspired by a book that he read, which was actually a book that I read many years ago, that was mind-blowing to me, and I'm sure to him, and hence why he included it in his book. And it was a book entitled Who Built the Moon? Okay. So anyway, so a hollow moon, let's just get right into it now. Now first of all, I want to talk about, well, let me just quote from Dr. Sean C. Solomon of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he said that the lunar orbiter experiments have vastly improved knowledge of the moon's gravitational field, and indicated the, I quote, frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. Okay? The moon, alright, now here's a fact that's rather interesting. the moon has only 60% of the density of Earth, right? But here's the thing, right? An equal amount of Earth material would appear to weigh twice as much of that of the moon. So that doesn't make sense, does it? Okay? That the moon ought to weigh twice as much as it does if it had the same materials we have on the Earth. Well, we know that it doesn't, don't we? It's far older for a start. Okay, now. Let me just quote you this. Okay, now this is regarding the size meters, the vibrations, and an experiment that couple of experiments that have been done that is a big giveaway as far as the hollow moon goes. Okay, the Apollo 12 mission to the moon in November 1969 set up seismometers and then intentionally crashed the lunar module, causing an impact equivalent to 1 ton of TNT. The shock waves built up for 8 minutes, and NASA scientists said that the moon, I quote, rang like a bell. Maurice Ewing, a co-director of the seismic experiment, told a news conference that he had no idea why this had happened. As for the meaning of it, I'd rather not make an interpretation right now, but it is as though someone had struck a bell, say in the belfry of a church, a single blow, and found that the reverberation from it continued for 30 minutes, unquote. Dr. Frank Press from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology said that for a, I quote, rather small impact, to produce an effect that lasted for 30 minutes was, I quote, quite beyond the range of our experience, unquote. The Apollo 13 mission to the moon in 1970 was aborted due to potentially catastrophic technical problems, and the Saturn V launch vehicle, weighing 15 tons, was crashed into the moon about 100 miles from where the previous mission had left the seismometer. When the launch vehicle made impact with the equivalent of 11 tons of TNT, NASA scientists said that the moon reacted like a gong, I quote, reacted like a gong, unquote, and continued to vibrate for 3 hours and 20 minutes to a depth of up to 25 miles. Ken Johnson was a supervisor of the data and photo control department during the Apollo missions, working for a company contracted to NASA. He told Who Built the Moon, you know, the book, he told the author, Alan Butler, that the moon it not only rang like a bell, but the whole moon wobbled in such a precise way that it was, I quote, almost as though it had a gigantic hydraulic damper struts inside it, unquote. All of which would explain why the moon vibrates in exactly the same way every time it moves closer to the Earth. The moon was hit by a meteor with the power of 200 tons of TNT in 1972, and this unleashed enormous shockwaves deep into the interior, but none came back. Now, interesting. Well, based on the facts then, right, and based on the fact that the Earth, okay, does not behave like that, and I personally believe at this moment in time that the Earth is not hollow, although there are people who theorise that the moon is hollow. I don't know about that. I've yet to get sufficient information on that to draw a conclusion, but assuming then that the Earth is solid, and assuming then that in proportion to the Earth size as far as the Moon goes, it ought not to behave like that if it were solid, right? So, rather interesting. I don't see how we can surmise from that anything other than the fact that the Moon probably is hollow, okay? Which then raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? As to, well, what then is inside the Moon, right? Especially when we consider the fact that there are, as we spoke about in previous videos, various points on the Moon of greater mass and gravity. You know, so what the bloody hell's in there, right? Well, we'll maybe shed some light on that later on. Okay, so just in closing, because I'm nearly done, I'm nearly out of time, another interesting point, okay, is, now this is where things get weird, right? Because now we're talking about things going against nature, right? Let me just put this out there, right? The outer surface of the Moon is extremely hard and contains minerals like titanium. Moon rocks have been found to contain processed metals including brass and mica, and the elements uranium-236 and neptunium-237 that have never been found to occur naturally. What? Never been found to occur naturally? So what are we suggesting here? That there's materials on the Moon that are not natural? That are artificial? Well, that's what it seems like. Okay, let me read on. Uranium-236 is a long-lived radioactive nuclear waste and is found in spent nuclear fuel and reprocessed uranium. Neptunium-237 is a radioactive metallic element and a byproduct of nuclear reactors and the production of plutonium. How the heck did this stuff get into the Moon rocks? Indeed, that's my question. Okay, they have also found iron particles that don't rust. And again, this does not happen naturally. So, sleep on that. Have a think about that tonight when you're lying in your bed. And also have a think about what you have been led to believe regarding the Moon your entire life. Right? From you for as far back as you can remember to this present day. You know? I mean, what is it about this world that when new information arises and new research comes to light and that the textbooks don't change? You know? That the information, that the education doesn't change. It doesn't. In fact, just by the by, there is so much, right, that is in your textbooks at school, and there's been so many documentaries made on the TV and so many newspaper and magazine articles regarding so-called factual information that has changed, right? But the changes don't make it public. And that's maybe for various reasons. I don't know if it's like embarrassment, well, no, apathy, those kind of things. I suppose you could like maybe put it down to that, but no, I think it's like the knowledge that you have suits the elites of this world, because if you believe things that kind of keep things nice and cozy and keep your life kind of running smoothly and not getting ahead of yourself and thinking maybe things about yourself that may be a bit big for your boots, that kind of thing. Anyway, my time's up, so we'll get into part 4 very soon, and we're going to get into some more exciting stuff regarding the Moon. Bye bye.